My parents chose my sister, then I became their only option. I want to start with the moment that changed everything, because if I start with the backstory, you'll click away, and I need you to hear this. My little sister had a microphone in her hand, 400 people in tuxedos and sequin dresses in front of her. My father's campaign banner the size of a garage door behind her, and she looked directly into a phone that was live streaming to 9,000 people and said, "None of this is real. I'm not okay, none of us are okay, and I'm done pretending." Then she put the microphone down, walked off the stage in her 4-inch heels, and didn't come back. That was 6 months ago. I need to back up so you understand exactly what led to that stage, because I was standing 15 feet away when it happened. And even I didn't see it coming, even though I'd spent 28 years training myself not to see things like that coming. I'm Claire, I'm the older one. My sister, Brianna, is 3 years younger than me, and from the time she was 6 years old, my parents looked at her and saw something they could use. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because it's the plainest, truest sentence I have about my childhood. My dad, Richard Whitfield, has been in local politics in our town in Ohio since before I was born. City council, then county commissioner, and for the last 2 years, a run for state senate that consumed our entire family like a second mortgage nobody agreed to co-sign. My mother, Diane, has spent 30 years as what she calls the campaign's creative director, which really means she designed the version of our family that got printed on glossy mailers and hung on lawn signs. And early on, I mean early, like elementary school early, they figured out that Brianna photographed like a dream. She had this easy, dimpled smile that didn't look posed even when it was completely posed. She was naturally warm with strangers, comfortable in front of cameras in a way that most adults never manage. Pageant judges loved her. Local news anchors loved her. Donors loved her. I did not have that. I was quiet, I stammered when nervous, I wore glasses until I was 14 and refused contacts, and I loved books more than people. Which is a personality type that does not test well in focus groups. So somewhere around the time I was 10 and Brianna was 7, a decision got made in my house that was never actually spoken out loud, but that governed every single year that came after it. Brianna would be the face. I would be everything else. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that by the time I was 12, I was already drafting thank you notes to donors in my mother's handwriting style because it needed a personal touch, and my handwriting apparently had one, even though my face did not. By 14, I was managing the RSVP spreadsheet for my father's fundraisers. By 16, I had ghostwritten 3 of his op-eds for the local paper. Nobody asked if I wanted to do any of this. It was simply understood that this was my lane, the way it was understood that Brianna's lane was hair and makeup appointments before every ribbon cutting, every homecoming court, every Whitfield family photo that ran in the county paper twice a year like clockwork. I want to be clear about something because I think it's important and I don't want you to hate my sister by the end of this. Brianna didn't ask for this either. She was 7. Nobody asks to be beautiful and useful to their parents at 7. But here's the thing about being the useful, invisible one in a family like mine. You start to build your entire identity around being needed for the unglamorous work. And you tell yourself that's its own kind of value. Because the alternative, admitting that you're aching for the version of love your sister gets just for walking into a room, is too humiliating to sit with. I left for college at 18, and I want to tell you I built a whole life outside of that house. And I did, sort of. I went to Ohio State, majored in journalism, because apparently I liked writing other people's public narratives so much I decided to make a career of it. I got an apartment in Columbus. I dated a guy named Marcus for 2 years who thought my family sounded, in his words, like a lot. He wasn't wrong. But every single major event, every campaign kickoff, every debate night, every county fair booth, I still got the group text. Not come support Dad, but we need someone on printer duty and check-in tables. Can you drive down Friday? Brianna, meanwhile, got a different kind of text. Wear the navy dress Saturday. The Chronicle photographer is coming by 4. She was 19 when Dad decided to run for state senate. And that's when things stopped being helpful hometown family and became something closer to a full production. My mother hired an actual image consultant. Not for the campaign generally, specifically for Brianna. A woman named Paula Denning, who had apparently done work for a couple of statewide candidates' families, and whose entire job, as far as I could tell, was to make sure my sister's Instagram. Her wardrobe, her public appearances, and even her boyfriend situation. She had one dumped within a month because he photographed sloppy. All reinforced this narrative. The Whitfields are wholesome, aspirational, all-American, and Brianna is the proof. I watched this happen over about 18 months, mostly from a distance. Mostly through group texts and the occasional weekend visit, where I'd sit at the kitchen table doing donor thank you cards, while Brianna sat in a chair in the living room, getting her hair curled. Shoot with a photographer, my parents were paying by the hour. I won't lie to you, there were nights I drove back to Columbus and cried in my car in a gas station parking lot, not because anything dramatic had happened, but because of the sheer quiet math of it. 26 years old, and I was still the girl who did the spreadsheets while my sister did the smiling. But I also started noticing something else, something I didn't let myself think too hard about at the time. Brianna wasn't smiling as easily anymore. Not in person, anyway. On camera, sure, she'd trained that reflex since she was 6. It fired automatically, like a nervous tick in reverse. But at family dinners, she'd gone quiet in a way that wasn't like her. She'd lost weight in a way my mother kept calling, so photogenic, you look incredible, and that honestly scared me a little if I'm being fully honest. Because I remembered what 19 looked like on me, and it didn't look like that. I asked her once over the phone if she was okay. She laughed that same trained, easy laugh and said, "I'm literally fine, Claire, God, why does everyone keep asking me that?" I let it go. That's the part I regret most, and I'll come back to it. The campaign kickoff gala was in April, 400 people, a ballroom at the nicest hotel in the county. A 10-piece band, a step-and-repeat banner with my dad's slogan on it, Whitfield, Ohio Values, Ohio Future, and a run of show that my mother and Paula Denning had planned down to the minute. Because that's what a state Senate campaign kickoff apparently requires. Brianna's role that night, as it had been for every major event for the past year, was to introduce our father before his speech. 90 seconds, memorized, warm, personal, growing up. My dad taught me that public service means showing up for people even when nobody's watching. That kind of thing. She delivered some version of that line probably 40 times over the past year at various events. It never failed to get a little wave of applause and a few misty eyes from the older donors. I was near the side of the stage, not on it. Obviously, I was there to make sure the teleprompter operator had the right speech loaded and to handle any press questions that came in during the reception, because that was my job. That has always been my job. I had a clipboard. I want you to picture that. I had an actual clipboard. Brianna walked up in a pale gold dress my mother picked out. She looked, I'll be honest, stunning, the way she always did in these moments. And for a second I felt that familiar twist of something I didn't have a clean name for, not jealousy exactly. More like grief for a version of attention I'd never gotten to have. She took the microphone, the room quieted. Somebody near the front had their phone up, live streaming to their own followers like people do at these things now, not officially sanctioned, but nobody stops it either. Because free publicity is free publicity. She started the line, "Growing up my dad taught me," and then she just stopped. I watched her face do something I had literally never seen it do in public in 22 years of watching her perform. It cracked. Not dramatically at first, just a flicker, like something underneath the trained smile gave way. "Actually," she said, and her voice had changed completely, "I'm not going to do that speech." There was a soft ripple of confused laughter in the room. The kind people do when they think something is a planned moment of authenticity. My mother, I found out later, actually smiled at first, thinking Brianna was doing some kind of unscripted charm move that would play well. It was not a bit. I've been standing on stages like this since I was 7 years old, Brianna said, and her voice was shaking now, but she didn't stop. Telling people how wonderful my family is. And I want to tell you something true instead, since apparently that's rare in this room. The room went dead silent. I remember my clipboard was digging into my palm because I was gripping it so hard. My dad is having an affair with one of his own major donors. And my mother has known for over a year and has said nothing because the campaign needed her donations more than her marriage needed the truth. A gasp went through the crowd like a physical wave. My mom takes more sleeping pills than her doctor prescribes, and none of us are allowed to say that out loud. And I have been starving myself for 3 years, so I'd look right in photographs. And every single adult in my life who noticed decided it was more useful to compliment me than to help me. She looked out at the crowd. And then, this is the part that still gets me. She looked over at me, standing there with my clipboard at the edge of the stage, and something in her face softened for just a second. Like she was sorry, specifically to me, in the middle of blowing up her entire life. "I'm done being the face of something that isn't real," she said. "I'm sorry, Dad." And she put the microphone down on the podium, gently, almost carefully, like she didn't want to make even that last part ugly, and walked off the stage and out a side door. 400 people. A live stream that, by the time I got my phone out of my clutch, already had 11,000 views and was climbing by the second. I'm not going to pretend the next 72 hours were anything but chaos. My father's campaign, which had raised close to $2 million in 18 months, hemorrhaged donors within a week. 3 of his biggest backers pulled out publicly, including, and this part came out later and I'll get to it, the donor Brianna had named. Who it turned out was not just an affair, but someone who had been quietly funneling money through a shell consulting firm to skirt campaign contribution limits. Which is a whole separate legal problem my father is still dealing with. My mother had what I can only describe as a full collapse. Not metaphorically, she ended up in the hospital 48 hours after the gala, and while the official line to the extended family was exhaustion, I was the one who drove her there. And I know it was more complicated than that, and I'm going to leave it there because that part isn't mine to tell in detail. Brianna didn't come home, she didn't answer calls. She deleted every social media account she had, the same accounts that had thousands of followers, that had been managed and curated for a decade, within about 6 hours of walking off that stage. It was like she'd been planning her own disappearance the way she'd once planned outfit changes. Fast, complete, no loose ends. And me, I got a phone call from my father 4 days after the gala. Not "Are you okay?" Not "How are you holding up watching your family implode in real time?" He said, and I remember this word for word because I've replayed it so many times. "Claire, we need you at the town hall Thursday. We need a Whitfield up there who can hold it together. 22 years of clipboards and thank you cards." And the first time my father asked me to stand where the cameras could see me was the week our family was actively on fire. I almost said no. I want you to know that. I sat in my car outside my apartment in Columbus for almost an hour with the phone in my lap, and every instinct I had said, let it burn. Let him stand up there alone and answer for what my sister said, because she wasn't lying about any of it, and I had spent my whole life being the quiet accomplice to a story that wasn't true. But then I thought about my mother in that hospital bed. And I thought about the fact that whatever happened Thursday, it was going to happen to my family's name, whether I showed up or not, and if I was going to be attached to it either way. I'd rather be attached to something honest. So I called him back and said I'd come, but I told him I wasn't doing a speech his campaign wrote. I'd say what I actually thought, or I wouldn't say anything. The town hall was in the same county the gala had been in, at the high school gymnasium, and it was packed partly with actual constituents, but mostly, let's be honest, with people who'd seen the clip of Brianna and wanted to watch the aftermath in person. Paula Denning, the image consultant, met me in the hallway before we went in and tried to hand me index cards. "Just hit these 3 points," she said. "Family, resilience, moving forward together." I looked at those cards for a second, and something in me that had been quiet for 28 years just stood up. "Paula," I said, "did you know Brianna wasn't eating?" She blinked at me. "That's not really. Did you know?" I said again. "Or did you decide it wasn't your problem because she still looked good in the photos?" She didn't answer that, which was its own answer. And that's when something clicked into place for me, a detail I'd been turning over since the gala without letting myself fully look at it. A few weeks earlier, I'd overheard part of a phone call, Paula's voice through my mother's cracked office door, saying something like, "She needs to hold it together through the primary. We can deal with the rest after." I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I'd assumed she meant some scheduling thing. I asked around a little after the town hall, quietly, the way I know how to do because quiet has been my whole skill set for 28 years, and what I found out. From one of the younger campaign staffers who felt guilty enough to talk, was this: Paula had known for months that Brianna was struggling. She'd known, and she'd told my mother it was manageable, as long as it didn't show on camera. And she'd specifically told Brianna, this is the part that still makes my hands shake when I think about it, that if she said anything to anyone before the primary, about anything, it would destroy her father and it would be her fault. That's what broke her. Not just the years of being groomed and performed and starved into a shape that photographed well. It was being threatened into silence about it by the one adult who was supposed to be managing her well-being, and instead was managing her image. I had that staffer's account, and a partial voicemail Paula had left my mother that the staffer had accidentally been copied on, forwarded to me before I ever walked out onto that gymnasium floor. So when I stood up at that town hall, I didn't use the index cards. I told 400 strangers, and a live stream audience that had, by then, ballooned past 60,000, that everything my sister said was true. I told them I'd spent my whole life doing the invisible work of building a public image for a family that had, somewhere along the way, decided the image mattered more than the people in it. I told them about the voicemail. I named Paula Denning, specifically, and what she'd told my sister. I said my father needed to answer for the donor situation honestly, in public, that week, not through a statement written by someone being paid to protect him. And then I said the thing that I think is the actual reason this story has an ending worth telling you. My sister spent her whole childhood being useful to this family by being seen. I spent mine being useful by staying unseen. Neither one of those was ever actually about who we were. I don't know if my father's campaign survives this week. I don't really care anymore. But I know my sister needs to hear that somebody in this family finally believed her instead of managing her. I'm not going to tell you it was a triumphant moment, because it wasn't. It was quiet in the room after I said it, not applause, just this stunned, uncomfortable silence. But 2 local reporters ran the Paula Denning voicemail story within 24 hours, and it turned out I wasn't the only person she'd pulled this on, a second family. From a campaign 2 counties over, came forward within the week with a nearly identical story about their own daughter. Paula was dropped by her firm inside of 10 days, and last I heard, the second family is pursuing something legal, which honestly, good. My father did not win the primary. I want to be honest about that too. This isn't a story where the campaign miraculously recovers, and he becomes senator, and everyone hugs it out on election night. He dropped out 11 days after the town hall, citing "family matters," which was the first fully true sentence his campaign put out in 18 months. What did change was smaller, and slower, and honestly more important than any election. My mother, once she was out of the hospital, started actual therapy, not the kind you do for a campaign photo op, the real, unglamorous, weekly kind. My father and I have had exactly 2 real conversations since the town hall, both of them harder than any speech I ever ghost wrote for him. And I don't know, yet, what our relationship looks like on the other side of this. I'm not going to pretend that's resolved just because it makes a better ending. Brianna didn't talk to any of us for almost 3 months. She was staying with a college friend in Michigan, off every form of social media, and the only reason I know any of this is because in month 2, I got a text from an unknown number that just said, "It's me. I got a new phone. I saw what you said at the town hall. We talked for 6 hours that night. She told me things about those years I'm not going to repeat here because they're hers to tell, not mine. But she also said something I think about constantly. I used to think you had it easier because nobody made you starve yourself for a camera. I didn't understand until I left that you were starving too, just a different kind. Update, for anyone who's stuck with me this long, it's been about 3 months since that conversation. Brianna's back in Ohio now, though not living with our parents. She's got her own place. She's seeing a therapist who specializes in exactly the kind of thing she went through, and she started. Very slowly, posting again, but on her own terms this time. No brand deals, no curated feed, just her. 2 weeks ago, she and I had dinner, just the two of us, for the first time maybe ever without some family event orbiting around it. No clipboard, no camera. No spreadsheet. Just my sister and me splitting a plate of nachos at a Mexican place in Columbus, laughing about something stupid one of her old teachers said, and for about an hour. Neither of us was the face of anything, or the invisible one behind anything. We were just two people who grew up in the same strange, image-obsessed house, and were finally, actually talking to each other like it. My dad's already being asked about a future run. I don't know what I'll do if he goes for it again. Part of me wants nothing to do with it. But another part of me, the part that stood in that gymnasium and finally said something true out loud after 28 years of managing everyone else's narrative, thinks that if he ever does run again, it's going to be with the real story or not at all. And for the first time in my life, that's not my job to manage. It's just true.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating Reddit tales, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Archives of Reddit. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.